emergency exits.
Hello, everybody. This is Ron, your captain speaking. We are currently 30,000 feet in the air, and we haven't even left the airport. We just lit the joint. Just kidding, a little pilot humor there. We like to have fun. Our destination today is Casablanca, Morocco. So everyone, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for takeoff. We will be arriving in 6 hours and 58 minutes, so sit back and enjoy the ride. Okay.
Hell yeah, I like to travel. I like to travel, but I don't got a plan. Catch me rolling through your city, yeah. Got my toes in the sand.
7-footers. What is up? It's your boy, Jarod Hector. I am solo today. Jenna is on assignment. She'll be back next week to talk all of your favorite NBA hot topics and goodies. But, we're about 10, 11, 12 games into the season for some teams, and some exciting storylines are happening. First off, to kick off, Paul George has not taken the floor yet for the Los Angeles Clippers. But it looks like tonight might be the night. Now, we're recording this on Thursday, November 14th, so you people won't be hearing this until tomorrow, Friday, or later. But Paul George seemingly will make his first appearance of the season for the Los Angeles Clippers tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, of course, this is a back-to-back as the Clippers played last night against the Houston Rockets, a game they lost, and we'll get into that in a minute. So, it being a back-to-back, we do know that PG will not take the floor with his running mate Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi will most likely be on load management. We talked about load management last episode. As you know, I'm a proponent of it. Jenna's a proponent of it. I think there's more nuance to it there than just simply, hey, some guys want some rest, right? We talked about it last week. I'll just reiterate. There is science involved. There is a lot more that goes into it than just, hey, I'm taking the night off, right? It's figuring out where in the season, what's happening with your body, what kind of stress your body's under, that you can find an optimal time to recover so that you're able to play at your best, right? And for the Clippers, they have designs on winning an NBA title at some point, so this season. So in order for that to happen, Kawhi Leonard's going to have to be healthy. And we saw last year with that load management plan with the Raptors, he played about 60-odd-some games, and it worked because he played every playoff game and played high minutes in every playoff game. He was laboring towards the end, and you could see it on that leg. But had he not load managed during the year last year, that wouldn't have happened. So anyway, Paul George likely to take the floor tonight, and it'll be interesting to see what the Clippers look like with PG-13. This is an interesting sort of period for the Clippers because, again, Lou Williams is playing a lot of minutes right now. PG hurt, so he's going to have to get some time in there to sort of get himself acclimated. But, they're going to have to work through some kinks and figure some things out to really iron out what I believe will be a championship contender. In our preseason predictions, I did predict the Clippers would go to the NBA Finals and play the Philadelphia 76ers. And nothing I've seen so far this early in the season has dissuaded me from that. Though I will say, the Lakers are playing a lot better than I thought they would. Moving on, Gordon Hayward. He underwent successful surgery, and it seems as though he will not need as much time, and the rehab won't be as daunting. He did break his hand a few days ago, and Hayward came out and said, with that horrific leg injury he suffered 2 years ago, opening night of the NBA season, that rehab was extremely difficult. But this broken hand rehab won't be anything near the severity of that leg injury was 2 years ago. And I'm happy to see that for Gordon. I have my issues with the Celtics, and I've made them clear on this pod. But he was starting to come into his own and play excellent basketball. So I'm thankful for him that this injury does not appear that it will be too serious for him, and he'll be able to come back and be good as new. Speaking of the Celtics, listen, they are, record-wise anyway, the best team in the NBA. They're currently sitting at 9-1, and look, what you can say, and I know what the easy thing is going to be. Well, no Kyrie, so that must be what it is. That's why they're so much better. I don't know that I'm going to go out on a limb and say, well, no Kyrie, now they're good. It's not so much that as much as it is. I believe that Kemba, while not in a in a vacuum, he's not as good as Kyrie. I mean, he's a lesser version, but he does a lot of the same things that Kyrie does, just not as well. But I think Kemba's temperament works better, particularly with this Boston Celtics team and these young guys, Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I will also say, now that, Hayward's going to be out for some time, that's going to give guys like Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, more opportunities to do what they do. And I think, that's going to help. And it'll be interesting to see when Hayward does come back, because, again, he was starting to play well, how Brad reincorporates that whole thing, particularly if Hayward and Tatum tend to shine and do their thing. But, again, kudos to the Celtics early on, 10 games in, 9-1. As I mentioned, best record in the league on percentage points. And they have the number one differential in the league number two, at 9.2, right? So, I mean, look, they're playing well on both ends of the floor. Brad has figured some things out. Offensively, for sure, they're playing pretty good defense as well. And the Celtics look like a very good team. I'm still not out here to say that they're better than Milwaukee or Philly or anything like that, but they are playing like an excellent team at the current moment. So kudos to the Boston Celtics. On the Indiana Pacers front, Victor Oladipo was assigned to the G League for rehab. As you all know, Oladipo suffered a bad knee injury last season, and Oladipo was just assigned to the G League affiliate of Indiana, which is their Fort Wayne team, and he's making good progress. Head coach Nate McMillan was here a couple weeks ago when the Pacers were in town to play the Brooklyn Nets, and they'll actually be back here on Monday, this coming Monday. So we'll get a chance to talk to Nate and find out what exactly is going on with Vic, where he is in terms of his injury rehab. Now, I don't expect Nate to be extremely forthcoming in giving us an actual deadline date, but it looks like, all things going well, we could see Victor potentially play before this calendar year ends, which will be wonderful for Indiana. By the way, Indiana is playing good basketball right now. They're 7-4. They've won 4 in a row. Domantas Sabonis is playing incredible ball, as is their free agent signee, Malcolm Brogdon, who the Milwaukee Bucks surely miss right now. So when they get Vic back, it'll take some time to, again, get reacclimated to what Indiana wants to run and to play off of Malcolm Brogdon, who he hasn't played with yet. Indiana's going to be a really good team. Defensively, they're going to be excellent on the perimeter, and they can score. Now Brogdon and Vic can be interchangeable, right? Both the guys can catch and shoot. You can run Victor off the ball. He can attack the rim, / move off the ball. That's wonderful news for Indiana. So kudos to them, and we're hoping that Victor Oladipo has a speedy recovery. We don't know yet if he'll actually play any games for the Fort Wayne team in the G League, but he's set to practice for them. He's doing 5-on-5 work, and still there is no official timetable on his return, but it is looking like it is likely he will be able to return again before the calendar year ends in 2019. Houston Rockets, we mentioned them earlier, big win last night against the LA Clippers. And, honestly, it was one of the Rockets' better wins this season. And I got to tell you, they look really, really good. Houston's 8-3. They're on a 5-game winning streak. James Harden is a monster. He's on a tear right now, leading the league in scoring, averaging just under 37 points per game. He was cooking last night. Dropped 47 in that win against the Clippers. But Houston's playing well, and they played well defensively last night. Now, defense is not their calling card, clearly. They are going to beat teams because they have 2 of the best offensive players in the league in Harden and Westbrook. And they might have, now that Kevin Durant is sidelined for the year, they have the best isolation scorer in the league in James Harden. I mean, what he does is insane and ridiculous. And I know for a lot of people, he's not fun to watch, blah, 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 whatever. All he does is bait refs into fouls. Listen, I say it all the time. I'm going to say it again. If you don't want to see him go to the free throw line, don't foul him. When he holds the ball out there, stop reaching. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? He has mastered his craft, and one of the things that not we, but a lot of fans don't understand with Harden and his game is he's a master craftsman. Like, if you watch the games intently, as we do, his footwork is impeccable. I mean, this guy is able to pivot, jump stop, step back. I mean, he's got the whole arsenal in the game working, and it's clear that he works on his craft, and he played very well last night. And he actually played pretty good defense last night as well. Now, listen, let's not have any aspersions that or have any illusions that he is some all-NBA lockdown defender. That ain't it. But James Harden is a big, strong dude, right? He's about 6'5", barrel-chested, right? And he's strong, and he plays very good post defense. Had a couple good strips last night. Had a good strip on Kawhi late in the game. Kawhi thought it was a foul. It might have been. But, he's a better defender than I think people realize. Again, he isn't any all-NBA anything, right? That's not what he does. But he can provide resistance on that end, and if engaged for a possession or two or three, can cause serious problems for someone in terms of his ability to stop them in the post, his hands, his ability to cause steals. So kudos to James Harden in the start for the Houston Rockets. But the Rockets are going to be without Eric Gordon for about 6 to 8 weeks. He's having knee surgery, and, Gordon actually started the year. His play hasn't been great. So the Rockets, they're going to miss a body, but in terms of production, they're not going to miss that. I mean, he's shooting 28.3% from the field and 25% from three. Not good numbers for a player in Eric Gordon who's actually critical to what the Rockets do, right, and for their long-term success. So hopefully when he comes back in about 6 to 8 weeks, he's able to find that shooting touch again, and the Rockets can get back on track. Because, look, with what's going on out in the Western Conference, one of the things that we need to remember is the Rockets, for all their foibles, they are the team that has the workings and the DNA of a team that has been to the Western Conference Finals and who was one game away from defeating the Kevin Durant-led Golden State Warriors. So, I mean, let's call it what it is. These guys are good. We know that they will score a ton of points. If they can shore up that at the defensive end of the floor, and by the way, when they play well and when they advance deep into the playoffs, it is because that defense shifts itself around. So if they're able to figure out that end of the floor and be better than league average at defense, Rockets are a scary team in the Western Conference because they've been there, right? They've had the playoff battle wars. Russell Westbrook's a playoff veteran, so it's not like you're throwing a neophyte in there. Capella's been there. Harden, as we know. Now, the question is, can Harden maintain his stellar level of play that he does throughout the regular season in the playoffs or come close to approximating it? I will say he has been better of late than he was early in his career in the playoffs. So we'll see. But, Rockets will have some things to work through. Looks like Ben McLemore's going to be getting some more minutes. Daniel House is also out with injury right now. He'll be back soon, and he'll have to shoulder some of that load now that Eric Gordon is out. More injury news, and it seems like, God, that's just where we are right now in the NBA with just injuries on top of injuries. Now, look, some of them are freak injuries, right? I mean, Steph Curry, that was just, he landed funny. And then Aaron Baines landed on his hand. I mean, that wasn't, that was a contact injury. Things like that happened. But it just seems like, and again, it could just be present of the moment, but the injuries are creeping up so high and so early in the season. And again, we go back to this load management thing. The question is, where do we have a problem, right? Where are these why are these injuries occurring? Part of it is, as I mentioned, the inability to rest and recover properly. Look, 82-game season is just way too long. And I said it before and I'll say it again. It just is. And the NBA's increased globalization and the teams taking off and going to China and Asia and these other places to grow the game, which is a wonderful idea. And I commend David Silver before Adam, the commissioner emeritus, and current commissioner Adam Silver for their wonderful efforts in doing that. But these guys aren't having time to actually rest and recover and heal. And that is how you're able to stave off these kinds of injuries, because these are high impact minutes we're playing here, and load management is critical for the long term health and success of these guys. There are ways in which it can be done so that the fan is taken care of, and when they buy tickets for a game, it's sort of like, I want to see the stars play. I get that, but you buy tickets for a Broadway show and it's starring, Jeff Goldblum, and he's sick with laryngitis that day or whatever, you're going to see the understudy. Like, that happens. It's the nature of live performance, right? Like, sometimes the main attraction is not going to be there, which is why it's important for the NBA, in my opinion, to really make sure. I love the focus on the stars and the promotion of these superstars we have in the league, and we have some of the best superstars in all of sports in the NBA. The games still matter, right? There's still excellent players on the floor, and these teams are really good. So let's focus on these teams and these awesome matchups, and a little less of the, hey, I'm only here to see Kawhi. I'm only here to see Giannis. I'm only here to see this guy. Yeah, those guys are all world and great, but other things to see as well. Karis LeVert, he had thumb surgery and will be out 4 to 6 weeks per Adrian Wojnarowski. There was ligament damage that the Nets did fear when he missed that game Tuesday night. And, look, it's kind of a shame for LeVert because last year we know what happened. He was sort of coming into his own, really leading the league and kind of taking that next step up. And he dislocates the ankle, and he missed essentially the rest of the season until they got back for the playoffs. But even then, when he came back right around the All-Star break, he had to really work himself back into it. And it took him a while to kind of figure out what he was doing. And then by the playoffs, he had found his footing again and was back on target. But this is another setback, and it's unfortunate because this is a young man who, in my estimation, his ceiling is an all-star, right? Like that's what I think he can be in this league. But this is now his fourth season in the NBA. Every year he's been here, there's been some kind of injury, and that's unfortunate. And you don't want to throw out labels like injury prone because that's kind of unfair. But even going back to college, I mean, that's the reason why LeVert slid down into the 20s, and the Nets were able to grab him. Because had he not had those injury concerns from college, LeVert was easily a lottery pick. So, I hope that the Nets, their performance staff, Karis LeVert, and his team can really figure out and work on a plan to do the best they can to minimize and mitigate these injuries. And injuries will happen in terms of contact or whatever, but things that hopefully maybe can be figured out, whether it be through strengthening or different training regimen, whatever it may be, to reduce his injury risk profile, I think would be huge for LeVert. I mean, you look at someone like Curry, this injury notwithstanding, where he broke his hand, the ankles were a thing for early part in his career. He's missing a ton of time. He did some different things, and since then, ankles haven't been an issue, right? For the most part. So, I think we always talk about and tout the greatness of modern medicine and what can be done. I think it's important that as we look at sports and as guys realize that this is my career, my livelihood, and they all know that, listen, you're trading on your body. So making sure that it is in its optimal condition at all times is paramount. And whether that be looking at sports science and the different ways in which your training regimens can be altered, revamped, and even changed to reduce injury risk, if that is a thing, I'm all for it. You can't, it's sports and it's contact sports. So injuries will happen. That's just the nature of the beast. But if there are things that you can do to prevent that from happening, I'm all for it. And I think all the players and most of these guys recognize that, and that's what they're going to do. So, we're going to bring back a segment that I thoroughly enjoy, and it's called This Team is a Dumpster Fire. And, last season, the team that made the dumpster fire list more oftentimes than not for us was the Phoenix Suns. And, man, I got to say, we can't really call the Phoenix Suns a dumpster fire. Now, look, let's not get crazy. It's still early in the year. But Phoenix, 6-4. They have a plus differential, plus 6.2. That is incredible. Devin Booker's been unleashed. Now that Ricky Rubio's there and he's playing point guard, and I've got my Ricky Rubio issues. Devin Booker's been lighting it up. The Phoenix Suns are playing good ball. Now, we're 10 games in, so I am not gonna lose my mind and say, "Hey, these guys are what are the next great thing." But I'll tell you this: Phoenix is playing a lot better than many people thought they would, and that's a credit and a shout out to new head coach Monty Williams, one of the great guys in the NBA. Very happy he got a chance to get a head gig again and really show what he's capable of doing. But Booker's playing well. Aaron Baines is a revelation. I mean, they're getting excellent play from various places on this roster. And look, I don't know that this is sustainable, so I don't want to get out here and say, "Hey guys, let's look out for these these Phoenix Suns. They're a playoff contender." Let's not say that. But again, Rubio, Booker, Kelly Oubre Jr. I mean, these guys, and again, Aaron Baines, not besides Booker, not names that people are jumping out of their seat to be like, "Oh, this must see NBA." But let me tell you, I've caught some of their games on League Pass, and they are playing better than expected. Kudos to Monty Williams and what he's doing out in the Valley of the Sun. But the Phoenix Suns are not this edition of that team is a dumpster fire. That award goes to the hometown New York Knicks. What is happening over at Madison Square Garden? My goodness. That team is a literal dumpster fire. And I don't know. I mean, I certainly had very, very low expectations for them this year. They're currently 2-9, bottom of the Eastern Conference. Their roster's just not any good. Now, let's start with some bright sides first, some positives. Mitchell Robinson, right, second-year young kid, playing well still. Kevin Knox looks like he's second year, also playing well. And rookie R.J. Barrett, also playing well. So, 3 positives. The rest of the team, though, not a whole lot of positive things to say there. I mean, that roster just isn't any good. You've got Bobby Portis, Marcus Morris, Julius Randle. I mean, you've got a glutton of players at power forward, and it's sort of like, do we need all these guys? Taj Gibson. I mean, are all these forwards necessary? Ivan Rabb. I mean, it's just there's a lot going on there, and again, I don't know what the Knicks thought this roster was going to be able to do. And that's the curious thing, right? They had the press conference on January 10th, a few days ago now, after that embarrassing loss to the Cavaliers, where Scott Mills and Steve Perry came out and said, this is what we're unhappy with what's going on with our team right now. And we thought this is a roster capable of winning games. I don't know who who told them that or what made them think that was a good enough roster to win games, because it's just not. I mean, I love R.J. Barrett. I think he's a great rookie. I think Kevin Knox has promised. I think Mitchell Robinson has promised. But those young players in general in the league don't lead to winning basketball. That's just by and large true, right? And then surround them with seemingly ill-fitting pieces that don't match. Again, Portis, Morris, Gibson, like what's going on there? And the development of Dennis Smith Jr. and Franklin Ntilikina hasn't been going according to plan. So again, I don't know what's happening. So now David Fizdale is on the hot seat because, again, Steve Mills, Scott Perry, after that debacle of a loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers, they came out and said, hey, look, we thought this would be a much better team, and we're disappointed in our start, which is crazy because I just don't know how they thought this was going to be a good thing. I'm going to read to you Mills' quote from that press conference. We just felt like, given that this is our 10th game, we felt that we had an obligation to come out and speak to the media. Obviously, Scott and I are not happy with where we are right now. We think the team is not performing to the level that we anticipated or we expected to perform at. And that's something that we think we collectively have to do a better job of delivering the product on the floor that we said we would at the start of the season. We still believe in our coaching staff. We believe in the plan Scott and I put together and the players that we assembled. But we also have to acknowledge that we haven't played at the level we're expected to play at. First of all, it's a little inside media for all of you. It is not customary that the GM and or president come out and talk to the media following a game. That doesn't happen. Following a game, it's head coach press conference, and then the head coaches from both teams do a press conference. If it's at the home arena, the home head coach is in their press room. The visiting coach usually does it outside in a hallway somewhere, and then both locker rooms open. That's how it goes. And if a GM or a president gets in front of a camera and is talking, it usually means someone got traded, someone's getting fired, right? Think something catastrophic of that nature. That's generally how that goes. They don't speak in those, after games. So clearly this was a directive put on Mills and Perry by the owner, James Dolan. And I really don't know what to say. I mean, you thought this roster was going to win games? I mean, how? It's not good. Now, if you want to argue you thought they'd be competitive and not lay down, sure. I'd agree with that. You've got guys in there who are competitors. But frankly, this team just isn't good. And Mills and Perry are being disingenuous if they want the fans to believe that this is the roster that they thought they would have to start this season. We all know it, and everyone can deny it till they're blue in the face. The Knicks cleared up all that cap space, traded away Kristaps Porzingis to essentially get a second max slot cap space. That's what they did because they were under the impression that they were going to get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant and some other big-name superstar in free agency. That did not happen. Now, why they didn't get Durant, I've got my theories, and I've talked to people, and I have some ideas around that. But look, frankly, and we heard what Durant had said earlier this year about the Knicks. It's like, look, it's hard to get the best players to play for the Knicks. I think a lot of fans look at the Knicks as a brand and expect these younger players who in their lifetime don't remember the Knicks being good. I saw the Knicks in the finals, but the kids coming up after me didn't see that. So the whole brand of the Knicks to them is not as cool to them as, say, the Golden State Warriors or the Lakers or the Nets now. The cool thing right now is not the Knicks. And I will say this, and that's Kevin Durant earlier this year, October 8th, on the Breakfast Club. I've talked to players around the league, and the feeling from players around the league about the Knicks as an organization is not a positive one. And this latest incident with Mills and Perry talking to the media and essentially throwing head coach David Fizdale under the bus, right? Because when you're questioning a team's effort and they're not as good as you thought they'd be, well, you think the roster's good, which, come on, it's not. Then who else are you blaming? It must be the coach. And David Fizdale's a popular coach with players around the league. What you're, in effect, these players are seeing is saying, wow, this is an organization that I want to come work for. This place with an owner who, I mean, we know that James Dolan has very thin skin. I mean, he's the Knicks are in a long-time feud with local beat reporter Stefan Bondi from the Daily News. They've known to be petty when it comes to what they believe are criticisms from the media. Hello, that's what our jobs is. We're supposed to criticize you when you're not doing things the right way. James Dolan had Knicks legend Charles Oakley forcibly removed from Madison Square Garden. I mean, these things resonate, and players see that. If I'm going to go work somewhere, why would I want to go work for an organization and an owner that does things like that? That sounds terrible. That's essentially your boss. Well, I don't want that in my life. And as great as New York City is, the best city in the world, in my opinion, I can go somewhere else to get New York City. I can go to Brooklyn, and I'm still right here in New York City. And so back to the Knicks, they thought they were getting big-time free agents this summer. They did not. So now they figure, okay, well, we got to spend this money somehow. Now, the one thing I will give Mills and Perry credit for is that instead of signing a bunch of people to long-term deals and locking up that cap, everyone pretty much is on 1 or 2 year expirings, right? So come 2022, all that cap space will be opened up again. So the Knicks aren't really locked into any terrible contracts. That's the good news. The bad news is, who are you going to get to come there? What free agent is like, the New York Knicks is where it's at? What have they done to show that they are an organization that is on the rise, that you're like, okay, if I come here, I bring this guy with me, we get these young pieces here and Barrett and Knox, and I trust the development system there, we're going to go places. I mean, that's the other thing. Do you even trust that the Knicks infrastructure is going to develop R.J. Barrett, Kevin Knox, and Mitchell Robinson to their fullest potential? I'm not. What have you seen in their history that has shown you they're capable of doing that? Yeah, not much. And so the thing about teams and competitive advantages, all things being equal, talent and coaching, your competitive advantage is ownership and front office. And the Knicks are severely lacking in both of those areas. The thing is, you can't fire the owner. I mean, it's his team, so he's not going anywhere. And again, Mills, Perry, okay, some positives, a lot of negatives. I mean, at this stage, you can't even trust that the Knicks will do right if they got the number 1 draft pick. This past draft, 2019, that was the other thing. They were like, all right, we're the worst team. The Knicks can't even tank right? They were the worst team in the league last year and couldn't even get the number 1 draft pick. Now, we do know there are new caps laughed. Good Lord, I can't even talk. We do know there are draft lottery smoothing odds, right? So that it disincentivizes teams from tanking. But still, the Knicks were among the teams that had the best shot to get the number 1 pick, which would have been Zion Williamson, and they couldn't even do that. Now, they got R.J. Barrett, win. But again, do you trust them? You trust an infrastructure that RJ is going to develop to the best of his capabilities? Now, from what I can see early, RJ looks like the kind of guy who he may thrive in spite of the infrastructure around him. It's looking like that early, but again, we're only 10 games into his NBA career. So I can't call that a guarantee by any means, but he seems to have that kind of motor and be that kind of guy. So kudos to RJ for definitely overcoming what that is, which is terrible. Now, in terms of where would they go from here? Look, it's obvious what's happening right now is that the Knicks are getting ready. There are three life jackets on the sinking Titanic that is the Knicks. And again, players and all that, they get to stay. But there's only 3 life jackets left. Dolan's got one of them because it's his ship. So there's 2 life jackets left. Mills, Perry, Fizdale. 2 of them are gonna get jackets. One of them ain't. Likely going to be Fizdale, going to be the odd man out. And it's a shame because he was given a raw deal, right, in many ways. This roster isn't good enough to win at a consistent rate. But to be fair, some of these blowout losses can't happen. And there needs to be more effort and energy being put out by the players. Now, he's still working on rotations and different things, so we'll see. Again, we're only 10 games into the season, but not a good sign, and things not going well for the woeful New York Knicks. This week's dumpster fire. And now, the return of America's favorite segment. What's up with? So, one of the beautiful things about What's Up With is that we can use that phrase to mean a variety of different things, right? What's up with in terms of like, kind of like the last segment with Dumpster Fire, like what is going on with that person or that team? And we could also use it positively, right? Like, wow, what's up with, like we said, the Phoenix Suns earlier, playing better than expected. A team that or a grouping that I want to say what's up with is what's up with the Toronto Raptors. And I say that not necessarily in a negative or positive light. The Raptors are actually playing excellent ball and are better than a lot of people thought they'd be. I mean, I had them going to the playoffs anyway, so they're not really outsizing my expectations. They're 8-3. Pascal Siakam playing like an all NBA forward. This is incredible. This is a guy that 2 years ago was averaging 7 points a game. He's now averaging 27. I mean, that is a huge jump. And 27, that's a step up from last year, right? He might win most improved player 2 years in a row. That's incredible. But I say what's up with the Toronto Raptors because there's some challenges that they have right now. Challenge being that there's some injuries. Kyle Lowry's out. Serge Ibaka's out. And they are playing a lot of minutes right now with Van Vliet and Siakam. And, and Patrick McCaw is also out for them. The difficulty playing with these injuries early in the season is that now you have these guys like Van Vliet, like OG, like Pascal, playing heavy minutes very early in the season. Remember, this is a team that went to the NBA Finals last year. For most of these guys, right, that's the latest they've played in their careers in the NBA, right? The Raptors famously, prior to Kawhi coming last year, would lose early to LeBron James in the playoffs every year. These guys played into mid-June last year. So there's some tired legs. And with Van Vliet and Siakam playing in the high 30s, low 40s of minutes per night, and we're in November, I worry about them come Christmas time if these injuries linger and guys like Ibaka and Lowry and et cetera don't come back. Now, Masai Ujiri, Raptors president of basketball operations, one of the shrewdest executives in the league, they do have some moves they can make to shore up some depth on this roster, and they're going to need to. Because, look, I think what we've seen is that Pascal Siakam's really good. OG Anunoby, good. Kyle Lowry, good. Fred VanVleet, good. This team, dare I say it, I think they're going to make the playoffs, barring no major injuries. They can make another run in the Eastern Conference. Why not? And so if that is the case, I worry that on the front end, they're expending too much energy, too many minutes, that may cause problems later on down the line. We just talked about earlier in the episode, the idea of injury and load management. And look, there's not an opportunity to load manage Van Vliet or Siakam right now because there's not enough bodies. They got to play. Nick Nurse has shown that he's not too keen on some of the back end of that roster, but he kind of has to play them because he got no choice. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson's getting minutes right now, and they need those minutes. Stanley Johnson's going to have to get minutes, right? Like these guys are going to have to play more. Norm Powell, Terrence Davis, Chris Boucher. These are all dudes that are going to have to play minutes. And you're like, who are these guys? Yeah, well, that's the thing. So watch what's going on in Toronto, and let's take a look and make sure we're keenly aware on where this team is going from here. My other what's up with, and this is a kind of a revisit, but what is up with Andrew Wiggins? Andrew Wiggins might be the most confounding player in the entire NBA, and I think I actually called him that once, because on raw talent alone, you probably can't name 6 players in the NBA you'd pick over him. Now, hear what I just said. Not on what he's accomplished, not on future MVP predictions, all NBA, none of that stuff. Just on raw physical talent. Andrew Wiggins is that dude. Like, he is that talented. But, you know, in the years that he's been in the league, it's been mostly disappointing, right? Yeah, he's averaging a lot of points per game, but, you know, that's one of those stats that when you look into it, he's not contributing to winning basketball and not exactly making what we would call positive contributions to winning. In his 5 seasons in the NBA, Andrew Wiggins, his shooting splits, field goal, three-point percentage, and free throw percentage. 44, 33, 73. I mean, that's below league average, right? Not good. Or at league average, I'd say. This season, 47% from the field. So, tick up. 36 from 3. Another tick up. And 73% from the line again. So, even on his free throws, but a jump up in his field goal and his three-point shooting. And those are slightly above league average. He's playing like a winning player. Now, we have seen spurts from Andrew Wiggins before where he'll play 5-6 games in a row like this. And you're like, you know? And everybody talks himself back onto that Andrew Wiggins train. They're like, that Andrew Wiggins, we knew he was good for a reason. He was the number one. Remember, folks, 5 years ago, he was the number 1 draft pick, right? Like, there is a reason people took him that high. He is that good. Timberwolves also playing good ball at 7-4. And right now, he just looks like someone who has figured some things out. He's averaging 25.9 points a game, which are a career high for him. Right behind him on his team is Karl-Anthony Towns, 25.8. His PR is 22.4, which is a career high for him. Now, he still takes way too many long twos, but look at that field goal percentage. It has jumped up. It is just under 48%. That's really good. And 36% from 3 right now. Again, small sample size. We're only 10 games in. Excellent playing. So the question now is Andrew Wiggins good again? Or is he good at all? That's kind of where we're at, right? Is he good? Again, those numbers are looking really good for him right now. And head coach Ryan Saunders, Minnesota was here to play Brooklyn first game of the season. And we talked about Andrew, and one of the things he said was, you know, the offseason and the way in which they want to play in terms of their style, their pace, shooting a lot of threes. He said that is something we expect Andrew to do as well. So it isn't like, you know, and we think he can. So they extended him, right? He signed that big deal. So it isn't like Wiggins is going anywhere. I mean, sure. I guess anybody's tradable. But this is someone they believe in, someone who they think is part of their core and their future. And right now, through 10 games, he's playing that way. Andrew Wiggins, dare I say, early, after 10 games, early all-star contender. But in all seriousness, I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing from Wiggins. And we talk about this all the time, just like in life. Same thing in the NBA. There's levels to this. What separates, because everybody in the NBA is talented, right? 450 players, 30 teams, 15 players on the team, 450 guys. You have to be insanely good at basketball to make it in the NBA. Now, what separates guys who just make the NBA versus guys who can contribute in the NBA is one level. Then there's the level between a contributor versus an average NBA starter. Then there's another jump, right? Between an average NBA starter and a fringe and borderline all-star, and so on. And it levels and levels and levels. Then your stars and your superstars. One of the big things that separates all of that is consistency. All right? Your best players in the league, your Giannis, your Bronze, Kawhi's, Anthony Davis, the list goes on and on, James Harden, etc., is consistency. Night in and night out, they do it. When their shot's not falling, they still find a way to, you look up, you're like, wow, they still made a way to make points, grab rebounds, and, you know, generally contribute to winning in basketball. That consistency is what separates. And that's, again, the talent has always been there for Wiggins. Always. Clearly. The question is, can he be consistent? Well, through 10 games, looking so good, so far so good. Now, 10 games turns into 20 games. We'll revisit this again, I'll say around Christmas. And if he's doing the same things he's doing and it's Christmas and the Wolves are still on this pace and in the playoff hunt, we got to look at them differently, because I said it last week or 2 weeks ago. Again, not what they've accomplished. Name a duo just on pure talent alone that you're taking before Wiggins and Towns. There are probably not more than 5 duos in the NBA right now you take over Wiggins and Towns, just on pure talent. Again, not on what they've done. And it looks like they're turning the corner and changing the page on that. So kudos to Andrew Wiggins and the Minnesota Timberwolves. My final, what's up with? You know, the San Antonio Spurs are an interesting bunch. They kind of hover around 5 and 6 right now. There's some games you look at them, you're like, wow, these guys look great. Other times you look at them and you're like, I'm not so sure. Has it all passed them by? We heard rumors, the Ringer's Kevin O'Connor reporting that DeMar DeRozan could be a potential trade piece and be dealt to the Orlando Magic. You know, you got LaMarcus Aldridge, a steady big man who, you know, does his thing. DeJounte Murray is a young guy who we have a lot of hopes for. You got Bryn Forbes. You know, you got some guys. But what are the Spurs now? And is this the first year in, 20-something that they actually missed the playoffs? Again, we don't want to get crazy. It's early, right? The Spurs have only played 11 games. But right now, they're under 500, 5 and 6, as I mentioned. They have a negative point differential. They're on a little bit of a losing streak. 3 games in a row. They just lost the other night to the Memphis Grizzlies behind a big game from my guy, Triple J, Josh Jackson. Or, sorry, Jaren Jackson Jr., excuse me. Josh Jackson, by the way, is someone that is lighting it up for Memphis' G League, and looks like he may get a call-up. That was on my brain there. But, yeah, the Spurs, what's up with them? Is this the way, and we don't know it for sure, is this how Pop's going to go out? No playoffs? You know, San Antonio is that team that you really don't know how to judge them until that rodeo trip. You know, every year the rodeo comes to San Antonio, and for that period of time, the Spurs go on a long road trip in January. That's usually how they fare after that road trip is generally an indicator of what that team's going to be. So we're a little bit of ways away from that, although, folks, Thanksgiving's 2 weeks away. My birthday, a week away. It's almost that time of year. But the rodeo trip is a little ways off, January. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see what this team can do, and can Greg Popovich get these guys to sort of come together and play at the level at which they think they can play. So keep your eye on the Spurs. All right, 2 quick things before we get on out of here. During that Clippers-Rockets game last night, Doc Rivers, Clippers head coach, he got heated with Tony Brothers, one of the game officials. And Austin Rivers, his son, who plays for the Rockets, was watching the whole thing unfold. He was on the floor, and he was yelling to Tony, tee him up, you know, and it was a hilarious moment. And I got some sound from Austin postgame talking about his dad getting teed up.
And the heat wave continues.
Well, you know, we're going to talk over that for a minute. But it was hilarious. You know, it was just a funny moment to see a son say to his dad or encourage a referee to get his dad tossed from a game and teed up. And Austin has said that, you know, he's seen that look from his dad before. He thought it was pretty comical. And Doc, you know, to his credit, also found it funny post game.
Get him out of here, man. Gotta get him out of here. I don't know. That made my night, though. I'm not gonna lie. We got the win. My dad got thrown out. Good night.
That was Austin Rivers. And in the post game and on social media, he had a picture and he said, "Welp, ... Thanksgiving's going to be awkward." And Doc commented right under the picture saying, "Hilarious. Love you, son," or something to that effect. You know, one of the things that we love about this league is sort of the connections these players all have, and, you know, the Doc and Austin connection is obviously no thicker connection than that, right? Like, that's father-son. And Austin, of course, used to play for Doc in L.A. It was just a funny moment and just shows the humanity of these guys and just the fun that can be had in sports, right? Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, we take this stuff a little too seriously, right? Like, at the end of the day, it is entertainment and it's fun. And we want to make sure that everybody is having a good time. So kudos to Austin for helping to get his dad tossed. And I'll be curious to see how that Thanksgiving dinner goes this year. And finally, this happened a couple weeks ago, but we wanted to make it clear. Actually, a couple days ago, excuse me. The Brooklyn Nets CEO David Levy is out. He's only on the job for 55 days. The reasoning behind him no longer being there, unclear. But, you know, this is apparently a mutual decision. Nets owner Joe Tsai said David Levy is a respected media executive and a friend. Truly appreciate his efforts in the past few months. I wish him well in his future endeavors. And that's all there is to go there. The Nets now will be looking for a new CEO, someone to sort of run their operations. We talked about Brooklyn a little bit last week. You know, there's some transition going on there, right? Joe Tsai, now the majority owner, taking over from Mikhail Prokhorov. Kyrie Irving's on the squad now. Kevin Durant's on the squad. He won't play till next year. These are some things that are all have to get worked out. Now David Levy's gone. The team's going through some transition. And, you know, on the court, they're not playing up to their potential. They are currently 4-6, below 500. They do play tonight against the Denver Nuggets, I believe. Yep, it's a TNT. Second game of the doubleheader. So it'll be interesting to see how Brooklyn, just in general, responds and moves forward after, you know, a somewhat slow start. You know, I want to sort of temper everybody's expectations. This team started 8-18 last year and made the playoffs, right? So, again, it's early, but there are things to watch, and the things you want to look at from a sign perspective are the guys getting along? Is communication happening? What's Kenny Atkinson's demeanor post-game? What's it like when he's talking to his players during timeouts on the huddle? These are the things you want to start seeing, and you want to start seeing an increase and an improvement in their defensive effort. That has been severely lacking, and that, more than anything, is why this team is 4-6. Offensively, they're fine. They score enough points. They're just woefully lacking defensively. So, overall, transition and growing pains going on in Brooklyn. Well, folks, thank you so much for rocking with the 7-Footers yet again. You know where to find us. Twitter, Instagram, at 7-Footers Podcast, at JS Hector on Twitter and Instagram, at Jenna Lemoncelli. We are on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Please listen, rate, review, download, subscribe, all those things. Special shout out to our good friends at CLNS Media, another platform that you can find our podcast at. Our good friends up in Boston. Great podcasts up there, podcasts on that network like the Cedric Maxwell podcast, Causeway Street, etc. Big shout out to Tommy, Nick, Josue, all the guys up there at CLNS. Until next time, folks, take it easy.
Spent a couple years out here with these raps, trying to have a plan that we made come true. Applied to some jobs, but I ain't hit back. I don't wanna trap, what's a man gonna do? Chevy told me come through to the spot. Got a little kickback, bring the whole crew. Right around 10, came dressed to the nines. You already know what we really finna do when we pull up on the scene. Pull up on the scene, pull up on the scene. Yeah, we pull up on the scene. See, my life is a movie. Pull up on the scene, did it so smoothly. Pull up on the scene. Mario Kart when I'm out on the road. Only out for people.